Hey, it's Drybear. We're continuing our series of covering leveling builds. I asked my audience if they wanted really hyper-polished endgame builds for late-game mapping and other activities, or if they just wanted to rapid-fire a whole bunch of leveling builds, and everyone kind of decided that leveling builds were more important right now. We've been exploring the warrior, and today we're going to be working on and showing off a warrior build that I think is pretty unique and actually very powerful for leveling. Now, the crux of this build is that there is a significant amount of fire damage available inside of the warrior / marauder side of the skill tree. And there's also a lot of very easy fire spells and warrior fire abilities to get early on. And so we're actually going to be skipping all of the martial style effects and going pure fire warrior / caster, and it's actually surprisingly strong. Now, the way we're going to do this is actually need a good mix of strength and intelligence to make this build work, but it's very easy to get early on, as we can just skip the starter point of the skill tree, which we'll talk about when we get there, and you just pick up mostly intelligence on your attribute highway, and you get a lot of strength from some of the warrior nodes as well. We're going to immediately pick up Flame Wall because it doesn't require a specific weapon to cast, and then we're going to be using the Molten Blast along with the Infernal Cry, and then later on the Perfect Strike, which are all fire damage. There's also a very far notable or keystone on the far side of the warrior tree that converts all of your damage, or 75% of all of your damage, into fire damage and increases fire damage as well. And so basically everything you do is fire. On top of that, we have the Molten Blast shooting projectiles that explode into more projectiles, which apply Infernal. There's a lot of specific points inside the skill tree that gives damage to if they're ignited. Increased damage on ignited, increased damage from ignite, higher chance to ignite, elemental damage, fire damage, penetrating fire resistance, and all of that. And you can put all of that together to make a very strong build for leveling that's very easy and plays kind of like a ranged if you wanted to play a ranged character for the warrior. On top of that, which is really cool, you can actually just put the firewall down and throw the Molten Blast through it. Since the Molten Blast is a projectile, it will pick up added fire damage from this. And for this build, we are going to be using a mace in the one hand to get the warrior fire abilities, but we're going to be putting a focus in the right hand because we can get a very large amount of increased fire damage from the focus. So focus with the fire damage, added fire damage on your weapon, added fire damage on your gloves, plus all the bonus fire damage in the skill tree, plus the Warbringer added damage from the War Cry on Warbringer Ascendancy, all puts together to create incredible damage. But this isn't the best part, because on top of all of this, you have very good AoE. If you add the Infernal Cry to this, you're going to do lots of AoE for explosions. But what's great about the Infernal Cry is not only does it cause explosions with the Warbringer Ascendancy, causing corpses to explode for damage, it causes enemies that die to explode if they're hit by the effect of the Infernal Cry. But additionally, Infernal Cry also empowers melee abilities. So what this allows for you to do is have great AoE ability while clearing and pushing through the campaign, getting to endgame, but it also means that we can use Perfect Strike, which is a wind-up Perfect Strike ability that does fire damage. We can empower it with Infernal Cry, hit the Perfect Strike window with Window of Opportunity as a support gem, and it does actually ridiculous single target damage. So you'll be using Flame Wall as well as Infernal Cry and Molten Blast to clear out enemies in mass, like doing normal mobs and mobbing. But if you use Flame Wall to ignite the target, and then you activate Infernal Cry to empower your next melee, and then use Perfect Strike with a full fire build and Avatar Flame from the talent tree, you can basically, I was one-shotting or two-shotting most rares that I was running into, and then like 3 or 4-shotting bosses as well. Like the single target damage from Perfect Strike with this fire build is ridiculous and gives you a lot of really awesome options. I'll put together a quick one sheet showing off the main thing here. I have the mace as well as the focus. You can see as you get higher and higher in level, you can add more and more fire damage to the focus. And then these are the abilities that I would run: Perfect Strike, Molten Blast, Infernal Cry, and Flame Wall. When you're super early level, you can see in the top right corner, I have a description for this. Right at level 1, you will want to start taking the attribute highway to get intelligence, add Flame Wall to your build, and then use Infernal Cry, Flame Wall, and Mace Strike until you get high enough level, like a couple levels in, like into Act 1, the first few chapters, and then unlock Molten Blast, and then you'll be using Molten Blast with Flame Wall for added damage until you unlock Perfect Strike, which is a little bit further into Act 1, and then Perfect Strike is going to be for killing bosses and single target on top of everything else. And this is just going to be your Flamecaster Molten Magma style warrior. This scales really well, and there's actually a good amount of abilities and stats in the skill tree that you'll be able to transition to late game if you wanted to continue continue this on into a late game build. Now, in case the image isn't readable for you, I put it up on Mobalytics as well with a framework for the build. Give it a favorite if you do like it. So I have the basic armor here, and again, you want fire damage, intelligence on the focus, and then you want physical damage and fire on the weapon. Remember that any physical damage, basically any non-fire damage with the Avatar Flame Keystone, is going to be converted into fire. So even if you don't have pure, if it's just physical on your abilities or your warrior abilities or even on your weapon, it's still going to be converted. A 75% of that will still go to fire damage and will give you a damage increase, which is super cool. You have all the abilities here, and then I put together like a late game version of the tree. And as you can see from this, once you're done with the warrior side of the tree, which we're going to talk about for early game, I think you can very easily cut over to the sorceress side of the tree, like sorceress witch. So cut through Templar and druid, pick up some regeneration as well as strength and intelligence from these notables here, and then cut over, and there's a whole bunch of fire penetration, fire damage, extra fire damage, life, AoE explosion on death, and more elemental damage as well, which would put you towards the like the end game. Like you won't get to this side until you're doing like Atlas and stuff like that, but everything else on the warrior side of the tree is all going to work great for your leveling process. Now, I'll put a link to both the one sheet if you wanted to zoom in on it, and the Mobalytics calculator if you wanted to use that as reference. Now let's talk about the build itself and how to play it and how it functions. So again, when you first started at level 1, you will have a mace that you'll get from the zombie, and you will have a large amount of strength because you're a warrior. What you're going to want to do is go to the attribute highway and pick up some intelligence, and you can go straight to the fire damage here. Like these two nodes are going to be great, and you'll pick up that intelligence. Then you can add in flame wall with enough intelligence there, and you'll be able to pick this up. This is great because it does fire damage. We're going to be increasing our fire damage from that, but it also applies ignite, and any projectiles you send through it will get added fire damage as well. So all of that gets added together, and you get extra damage on top of that. When you're first early on, you're basically only going to be having Infernal Cry, Flame Wall, and Mace Strike, which is perfectly fine. Mace Strike actually does a good amount of damage, and you can just kind of whack things. So all you're going to do is Firewall, and you can Firewall, and then just like, you know, Mace Strike on enemies, and your cooldown on Infernal Cry is going to be level 8 seconds at the level. So you'll just Infernal Cry, throw out a Flame Wall, and just Mace Strike things to death. That'll carry you for the first 15-20 levels. You should get Molten Blast pretty quickly, though, once you get a uncut skill gem high enough, and that's when Molten Blast is going to start doing it. Molten Blast itself is a warrior ability. It does have strength on it, and it does have its own fire damage from it as well. And you're basically just going to be walking around, putting out Flame Walls, throwing Molten Blast through it. The thing about Molten Blast is a projectile that splits into other projectiles, and it always goes a minimum distance. However, if you hit a target directly with the Molten Blast, it'll split from that target and go back. So you sometimes just want to Firewall from a distance and throw magma at them so it splits, but it's perfectly fine in melee to hit them directly with the Molten Blast so it splits and does damage, and you get the projectile damage on it as well. Now, for Spirit, you can use either Herald of Ash, or you can actually use the Raging Spirits. They're probably about the same. I think Herald of Ash is probably a little more effective because we have so many scalars off of Ignite triggering on the enemy, but you can run Raging Spirits since we have the intelligence anyways. That's the one that causes the spirits to summon when you are, you know, using fire spells. So you can run Herald of Ash, which will give you some nice AoE of more Ignite, or you can put in Raging Spirits as well. Raging Spirits will just make you summon these little spirits when you put your Flame Wall out, and they do decent damage. It's not a small amount of damage. So you can actually just kind of put a bunch of these out and get a whole bunch of Raging Spirits running around, but because you have the intelligence, you're free to use it, and I think they're probably about the same overall in effectiveness on what you're trying to accomplish, so it might just be a flavor choice. Now, a couple things to know about Infernal Cry, because it's actually a pretty wide set ability that has a lot of really cool functionalities. It is by itself a war cry, so you will war cry. It will empower your next melee ability and more if you have endurance charges, and you can also then use it to mark enemies, which initially won't do any damage, but the enemies themselves, if they die, will explode doing fire damage, which is quite good. However, the way we're going to use this is not only being able to cause the enemies to explode, there's going to be an Ascendancy choice here for us that makes it so that when we war cry, enemy corpses that are near us will explode. You can use this to one-shot rares or the magic packs as well, the blue packs, as you can get a bunch of corpses on the ground and then Infernal Cry and blow them all up. And then once you get through Act 3 and do your Chaos, your Trial of Chaos, you can actually make it so your war cry has no cooldown, so you can just spam it as much as you want, but that's going to be more towards the end of normal mode if you wanted to do that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pop the Infernal Cry and get the empowered buff. which opens us up for a great single target option for this build, which is going to be the Perfect Strike. So this is a Perfect Strike melee hit that does primary fire damage. So it's going to convert 40% of your physical damage. But remember, because we have Avatar of Flame, we're going to convert the extra damage into fire damage anyways, which does ridiculous fire damage. Then on top of that, we're going to use Infernal Cry, which makes your next melee attack do additional damage as fire for each of the enemies in range, up to 100%. So you can double the damage as fire for the next melee attack. Perfect Strike is melee, so it'll consume that charge for you. You can also melee with Mace Strike if you'd like. Your other abilities like Flame Wall and Molten Blast are obviously not melee, so they won't consume that charge. And of course, if you have additional endurance, you can get multiple hits on this as well. So you'll be able to pop this up and then do your Perfect Strike. Later on, you can get more hits of Perfect Strike. You don't think you need it while leveling. You're just going to be doing this for single target. Everything else should be dying to your Molten Blast and your Flame Wall, pretty much. Like you shouldn't really, and your Infernal Cry, you shouldn't really need to do this unless for single target. And the way this works is just kind of like more of like a Souls-like ability. You'll wind it up if you hold it down. If I hold it down and I don't release it anytime, it'll keep failing. So this is a Perfect Strike ability. When I glow, you have to let go at the right time to get the bonus damage. So if I go and then I let go early or I let go late, it'll fail, nothing happens. But if I go and I let go when it glows, you'll notice there's a big fire explosion that goes off. You need to be hitting this window, especially if we run with the Window of Opportunity support gem, which makes that perfect timing window smaller, but gives you 50% more damage if you hit the perfect window. So we get 50% more damage from this. We get 100% more damage from the Infernal Cry. We get bonus damage from fire. We convert a lot of the physical damage into fire. So basically, we Infernal Cry, makes our hands glow. That's how you know your next melee strike is empowered. We wind up the Perfect Strike, we release it, and we hit it. And that's how you're going to delete bosses. So if there's lots of enemies, you're just going to be throwing up firewalls, throwing out Molten Blasts, doing this, you know, Infernal Crying. And then when a big target shows up, you're going to pull this out and you're going to whack him in the face, and it's going to blast him into the next week with the amount of damage you have. And then you're going to transition. It's kind of like a caster warrior playstyle, but it's very good for leveling. And again, this is because we have so much of these nodes available at the very start of the skill tree, which makes it a great leveling option. So that's the skill setup. And then obviously when you wanted to go further into late game, there are some other options here as well. Hammer of the Gods you can convert as well. Volcanic Fissure, I tried this a bunch. At least in my opinion, I think this is better suited to a pure slam build. It does do fire damage, but you need to hit it with a slam to cause it to erupt. And I feel like unless you're going to convert like rolling slam or you're going to do like a quarterstaff build, I feel like it's not going to be as strong, but I could be wrong with that. You know, if you really wanted to run a variant of this build that is more focused on the fissure and slams, I think you could. It just seems to be that like war cries and fire damage are much more accessible rather than pure like physical or slam damage. And you probably have to build more into like slam options. And you could even do like a Titan variant of this with aftershocks, slams, and volcanic fissure. But again, it didn't seem to be as clean of a lineup for me when I was trying to get volcanic fissure to work, but you certainly could. You could also do supercharged slam, and of course you can go into the elemental tree and do things like firestorm. I think firestorm with this build will work great as well. And you can even do cast on ignite if you wanted to put this into like a pure fire build. And I would even recommend picking up flammability as well, just to get some more shred on fire targets that have high fire resistance. But let's jump into the talent tree. So again, we're going to come in here and we're going to pick up the melee damage point because we don't have any choice. We have to for the first point here. But again, because we want to put fire wall into the build right away, even at low levels, we're going to have like almost no intelligence as a warrior. We need to get like 15, 20 intelligence as fast as possible. So we're going to actually take the attribute highway here and do intelligence all the way. So 4 intelligence nodes until we get here. This gives us 10% fire damage, 6% penetration, 15% chance to ignite, 12% fire damage, 15% fire damage, penetrates fire resistance, and bigger ignites as well. So this put together with Firewall is going to give you a very strong start in the game. I didn't pick this node up until later on in the game just because it was an easy way to get strength damage, and the stun buildup was kind of nice, or strength stat. Just because you're spending so much on intelligence here, eventually you will need some strength to counterbalance it because the Molten Blast requires strength and the Flame Wall requires intelligence, so you need a nice mixture between the two just to get that balanced out. But then we're going to go from here and we're going to cut right over Attribute Highway doing intelligence, and when just the stone's throw away from this fire nodes, just at the very beginning of the tree, we have even more. So 14% increased damage with hits against burning enemies, chance to ignite, physical damage as extra fire damage, which we're going to convert back into fire damage at some point as well. So all of that works really well together. From here, I would recommend either, you have two options. It depends on what you want to feel. I think right up here on the Druid / Templar side of the tree, you'll be able to cut over here for intelligence. There's a bunch of more damages here. There's elemental, so it's 40% elemental damage. You can increase damage with hits against ignited enemies, more fire damage, a bunch of fire damage. So this node is probably the best option for you right out of the gate. So like as you're going towards the end of Act 1, come up here and grab all this damage. But you will want to work your way down here past this node, come down here, and you want to immediately pick up Avatar of Fire. This converts damage to fire damage. So even if you have abilities that don't do full fire damage, any damage that's left over that's not fire damage, a lot of it will be converted to fire damage, which means that it'll just make these better. You'll notice that before you activate this node, you'll have like a certain amount of DPS, and you'll see a damage increase for this because it's converting the extra damage that you have in your kit into fire damage. And then right next to this Avatar of Fire node, we have a pretty sweet setup here with more penetration, which you will need. There's a couple bosses that are very resistant to fire. Having this pen is going to be very useful, so you can actually go through that. More fire damage, magnitude, ignite, stuff like that, which is really, really clean. Then you're kind of set up. I would say with this build here, just these nodes, you will want to come over here and grab this strength. Because we spent so much on intelligence here, you will need more strength to level up your Molten Blast and Infernal Cry just to keep those up. But luckily, along this highway, there is a large amount of strength to grab here. You can actually get like, what, 32 plus 25. You'll be able to get that very easily. Put that together, and you'll be able to get a bunch of strength from that. So that's kind of where you're sitting. There are more nodes that you can pick up here. I would recommend getting these. This is going to make it so your empowered attacks do higher damage, which is going to affect your perfect strike combo after doing Infernal Cry. You can grab all these for damage with War Cries. War Cries have increased area of effect, which means Infernal Cry will affect more targets, which A, gives you more AoE from Infernal Cry, gives you more AoE explosion from the corpse on Warbringer Ascendancy, and also allows you to make sure that you get more targets for the empowered attacks. Then you get a whole bunch of additional attacks on the empowered attack, more empowered attacks. This is going to allow you to just delete single target with that perfect strike combo. Now from here, there is an option. You can go down this way if you want. You can get some Warcry business here. I don't think it's super useful. There's some nice fire damage and penetration here as well. And if you wanted to go into the mercenary side of the tree, there is these elemental nodes here which are useful, and you can even go further into the ranger side of the tree / huntress side of the tree as well. But my strong recommendation would be to go up here into the sorceress side, or here like through Druid Templar, and get over to the sorceress witch side if you can. There's a little bit of fire damage and chance to ignite here if you wanted, but I would cut over through the Templar Druid starter area, pick up the strength and intelligence along the way, plus some mana and life regeneration, and then grab these nasty nodes right here. Chance to ignite increased fire damage at a very easy cost. Strong fire penetration for targets that are resistant to fire, which is really good. You can get more damage against ignited enemies here, and a whole bunch of fire damage as well on this, plus a chance for enemies to explode if they're burning, doing fire damage as their maximum life to everyone around them, and all of that comes together. But this is going to be more of a late game decision once you move that far out. For Ascendancy, I think there's the strongest synergy with Warbringer, just because you're going to get Warcry speed here, chance you explode all corpses around you when you detonate with the Infernal Cry. You get more Warcry speed, and then also no cooldown on Infernal Cry, which works really well together. And this also gives the option of going into more Warcries if you wanted to develop the build further into late game. You probably want to just get armor and encased in Jade is the simplest synergy here. You're not going to have any totems for this to build off of as well, and you can break armor if you want, but you don't really need to. I think that the defense here is going to be great. You can probably just get either some armor here, or you can get the extra encased in Jade here for defense if you wanted to, just as part of that. And when you get super end game, you might have two hanging points that don't align, but again, my audience asked me to make leveling builds. We'll see, you know, you might just have to transition this into a stronger end game build when you get to like level 80 plus. But I think this is going to be a very strong build. And I've had a blast playing it. It's very easy, very straightforward, and it's a ranged warrior, which works really, really well. Now, again, as with all warrior leveling builds, you will want to make sure you have enough defense. Make sure you get to between 40 to 50% armor. I would recommend. You can actually play with energy shield with this build if you wanted to, because we're going to have a focus on it as well. Just make sure you keep those up to date. Keep your mace up to date. Keep your focus up to date with lots of fire damage on it. It'll make a very big difference in the amount that you can do. Get some flat damage of fire on your weapon and your gloves, and then just make sure you have a good enough resistances. As you move through the game, you want to make sure you're always keeping up with your resistances, fire, lightning, and cold especially as you move into cruel, because it can make a big difference in your ability to survive. So just make sure you're keeping up with that if you want to use it. But let me know if you end up using this build and where you end up taking it after, if you do take it into pure endgame.
If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.